conferences. It was to look at how global temperature could be reduced, because it's the temperature out there that is causing the earth to warm. We talk about global warming that is causing the different changing climate we experience. If you remember at the beginning of this year in Europe, it was so cold and freezing that people died due to cold. People on the streets, people in their homes. Then after the cold was the flood. The kind of rain different countries experience. They've not really experienced that kind of rain. And also back home in my country, in Nigeria, we also had our own fair share of it, starting from June, July, August. 2/3 of the state in Nigeria were flooded. Just those that we can all attribute all this to the changing climate all around the world. So yearly, the countries that under the United Nations, they come up to discuss how they could decide on a particular framework, they call it, they've been working on it for years, but a particular term to say this is how the earth should be, this is the temperature the earth should have, so that we could have the earth could be normal, because right now the earth is not normal. So the carbon out there is much. And as the carbon out there is much, the earth is warming. As the earth is warming, the glaciers in the North Atlantic and the Arctic there is melting. As those glaciers are melting, the sea level is rising. It's just like you have snow. When the snow melts and turns to water, it increases the water in the ocean. Increasing water in the ocean goes to some countries that are affected by it. Like, talk of those small island countries. You talk of the small island country, you talk of the Caribbean, where some places are disappearing because those places are submerged in water. So each time the COP, Friends of Parties, COP is held, that the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, is to decide what are the terms, what are we going to do to ensure we don't go out of extinction. Because there are places where people are, their communities going out of extinction. There are places where people are forced to migrate. In Bangladesh, I went for this side event and they were talking of how the rising sea level has caused the people to leave. Not because they want to leave, but they are seeing that staying here is dangerous to them. They can't stay here. So people keep moving. And when they move, there are issues with it. You talk of internal displaced person, you talk of forced migration, you talk of, like, for example, back home in Lagos, a particular community called Okunwafa, where they are close to the coastline. And in the past few years, the shoreline erosion has continued to increase. And you see lands going, you just see, before there used to be a road, but when you go back, the road is no longer there. Maybe before there used to be a fence, when you go back, there's no longer fence there. So all over the world, the temperature, the weather is changing. And
okay, now I heard that there was a protest, and I think this was the participants of this conference protested, and this was one of the first protests actually to happen in Qatar, because it's quite a peaceful place. Can you tell us briefly of this protest, how it happened and why?
Okay. The United Nations Framework Convention, the conference that is usually held, is a 2 weeks conference. And the first Saturday in between the conference, is the day they call the Global Action Day. And on the Global Action Day, the different participants that come from all over the country, because there are different groups represented at the conference. You have the youths, you have the women, you have the civil society you have the disabled people, you have different groups all coming to say, okay, this is our term, this is what we want, this is what we don't want. So they all come out on that Saturday, on that Global Action Day, to make their demands, to let the United Nations know, or the people in charge know, that this is what we want, this is our demand. Last year was in Durban, South Africa, and the people of South Africa came out to protest. They joined in the protest, apart from the participants that came from all over the world, because you have the issue of the coal miners, you have the issue of the women saying our farms the things are changing, so you people should do something. You have the people of the miners saying, you people are getting money, you are getting coal, but we are suffering. But right here in Doha, Qatar, it's a different thing. This is a country that have never had a protest. So the Global Action Day on the 1st of December in Doha was the first time the people of Qatar or the people of Doha will see a protest.
Wow.
Yes, it was historic. It was an historic event. It has never.
Was
They
it
don't have
was it was
protests.
it a
They
peaceful
have a way
protest?
of live. They have their system there. So seeing people on their streets was it was surprising. We didn't have the kind of energy we had in Durban. It was just like a walk. Maybe
Okay.
later in the video you will say it. Unlike in Durban, because apart from Durban and subsequent other countries, in Copenhagen there were arrests,
Right.
police. There'll be police, there'll be armored tanks, because the energy of some people will be more than the other. Everybody, no, we want this, no, we want this. But in
So
Doha, it was just
so
like, oh,
so so obviously this protest, you were not joined by the locals of Doha to help send the message.
not really. It's short. It was too, it was too, it was too fast, too quick. Everything just worked within the time. Seven till people started coming out from 7, mobilized 7 to 8, and 8 to 10. By 11, everything was over. But in Durban, I guess we finished around 1.
Okay.
Yeah, we finished around 1. But since they were not used to it, it was just the participants that were there and some Arab youths, which since it was hosted within the Arab region, so the youth within the Middle East there, they had their own, but we didn't see the kind of energy we saw last year. They were not used to protest. They don't protest in Doha. They don't protest in Qatar. For like a lady I met, she works with an NGO in Spain, and the NGO is affiliated to International Labour Organization. And she made me understand that there were issues of workers. Qatar is an economy that is growing fast. They're growing, they are developing. So lots of construction workers going out there. So you have migrants coming to work.
Right.
Yeah, most of the workers you have in the construction industry in Qatar,
What are their working
80% of
conditions
them are
there? Just
migrants.
just to come out of the topic, what are their working conditions there?
Yes, that was the issue the lady told me. The working conditions are not really good because some of them don't really know what to they maybe back home they are told something else, and when they get back to Qatar they see something else and they're like, man, the kind of houses they live, the kind of places they put them to live in are not. I saw somewhere not far from the hotel I stayed while in Doha. I stayed in somewhere, Big Man Hotel or so. That's the name, I can't remember. So along the street, sometimes we go out to buy food, or when we are walking to the bus station where we get the bus that take us to the conference center. The conference center is in Qatar National, QNCC. So from the hotel, we walk down to the bus station, you get to see, some rooms, just they don't really open it, but if you peep, you just see bunks, and people are living there. And these people have left their homes, left their families, they're coming to work here. And, I met the drivers, most of the drivers that carried me. Sometimes they want to talk with you and they start telling you, some of them are mainly from Nepal and Filipinos. And this is how much they pay me. This was not what I was told back home. This car is on higher purchase. Immediately I finish paying, I want to go back and try, this is not it. We work, but we're not getting the money. I had like 4 or 5 experiences like that in the Texas. They get to talk to you and say, because down there, the country is rich. They have oil. Qatar is rich, they have oil.
Right.
But most of the people working, especially construction, is going on. I remember the day we went for our desert party. We had a party. They had a party organized for us at the desert. So I left there at about 2, 3 a.m. So I took a cab, and while going back to my hotel, I noticed work. There's work going on at night. Construction is going on. And most of the people down there doing those work are migrants. 80% of them are migrants, mainly from, you see most of them from Philippines, Nepal, Indian, Bangladesh, Pakistan, that's, you see most of them there. And really the working condition is not good, but I guess you can't really protest. And there are cases, ahead of cases, where people's passports are seized. Some of these migrant workers, their passports are seized.
Right.
Yeah, and because maybe the way they came in, the people that brought them in didn't really explain the terms for them, so they are indebted. Maybe the money they paid for they are coming in, their flights, and so you have to pay that before you want to go.
Right.
So you first work, and you work, they collect the money.
Yeah.
Then when
Anyway,
you've paid them.
thank you very much, Tina, for giving us that update on climate change. Like I told you, mentioned before, that today we're doing a review of 2012, the guests and the topics that we've covered. And my colleague here, David, is going to give us a brief rundown of some issues. And I think you'll be the best person to contribute in terms of you coming from Nigeria and being on the ground. So some of the issues we're going to talk about, you might be interested to help us.
Yeah, so one of the things actually we spoke to back in February for the first time, we spoke to Power Minister Barton Nanji, who told us that at that time he was working on numerous ways to increase power generation in Nigeria. Now, this was in the beginning of the year prior to the increases that we saw later contributed to the rainy season during the summer, which coincided with the flooding. But then we spoke to Nanji again in the middle of the summer during the time that he was having issues with the PCHN and the workers going on strike for not being paid their pensions and not being given the salaries that they were promised. And then we saw in late August, we had the resignation of Mr. Nanji. And what was very interesting is in our interview in February, he had told us that he would resign if power did not significantly improve in Nigeria. Now, we were unable and have been unable to reach him since the time of his resignation. But, and there was a lot of questions concerning the resignation itself, but it was interesting to note that he did resign in August, as it was shown later in September and October that the power generation from the summer was actually falling off. And we did speak to some people who had contributed to specifically the flooding and the amount of power generated by hydroelectric dams, which fell back down when the rainy season ended. So, Tina, we were wondering if you had seen anything, or what was your own perspective with power generation, your own experiences with power generation in Nigeria. Had you seen something like that during the summer? Had it gone up and down, or does it mainly stay the same? I know a lot of people, they require generators and they have to constantly buy fuel for that.
Yes, the Minister of Power resigned, Professor Barton Naji, and it's something that it's not regular. It's not. It's rare for a minister to resign on his own in Nigeria. They don't really resign. So for some of us, most of us, we saw it as a man of integrity. He saw that what he wanted to do was not allowed in the system the way he wanted it, and maybe he had his plans when he came into being into that position. So when he couldn't work the way he wanted, he resigned. But while he was there, power improved, because though that in June the price of electricity increased. It increased. Yeah, they increased the tariff on it. The people were angry because there are places where people still don't have dark, they don't have light. So why do you increase the power? But for that period, Batanaji was there. From my own observation, power was good. It was increasing. Then all of a sudden, it's bad. Before I left Nigeria, I left Nigeria on Saturday evening. On Saturday, in my community, the people are planning a protest. Why? They are hosting a district office of the power holding corporation, but the power supply is bad, and they bring the bills, that outrageous bill. Like what I pay for my own apartment is outrageous. I don't get that kind of, if it was commensurate, the power I get, if it's commensurate with the money, it's fine, but it's not commensurate. And the next thing, they want to come disconnect the light. They want to come cut off, they bring their ladder to come cut off the lights. And people are like, how many lights do you give to us? What's the power you give to us? You come here because seeing power, there are officials in your street, you are threatening, you know they're about coming to cut off the light. But you hardly have the light. You hardly have the light, the money is dead. Fine. Recently they said they were going to bring up the system of the prepaid. There are areas they have it, like in Lagos. I'm talking of cities. So there are some places they are not thinking of that because they may not even have light. Now, some places in Lagos have prepaid and some don't have prepaid. They are increasing efficiency in payment. They brought this card, you buy a kind of scratch card, and when you pay for the card is 2,000 naira. But when you scratch it, 150 naira is being charged for transaction cost. So at the end of the day, that card is worth 1,850 naira.
Wow.
100, when you're paying 10,000 and you buy like 5, you're giving them like 150, like about $1 each on each card. So now you're telling us you are doing prepaid, you're bringing e-pay. Why not e-light? Why not give us light that is worth it? So I was there in the meeting, and my area where I live, the residents association said, no, NEPA, we're going to give you a showdown. We'll give you 3 weeks to do something within that community. If not, we're going to show you guys that we can't come. It's like ripping off. I went on my YouTube page. If you go there, I did something. I just put the pictures there. I said the new face of rip off, because you see the card, you see how people were trying to pay, how some people didn't understand that they have to pay the card. People usually go and pay with the teller and the bank. Now you are bringing a system of paying and you're charging people transaction costs while the power is not efficient. That is even aside for those living, residential house. You're talking of what of those that do businesses? You want to do business, you have to, the first thing you think of is power. How is that business going to survive?
Right,
So you talk
because
of,
it brings me to the best issue of us talking to you, because
yeah,
sometimes when we have to call Nigeria, first things people are telling you, if we're gonna do a Skype interview, please, electricity might just go. So what can you tell me, like the percentage of power that you might have in a week before it's cut off? Because nobody seems to know. And as we come to the end of the year, and you've told us that during Naji's time, tenure, there was some kind of marked improvement. So
yeah.
if you talk of improvement, what are you talking about? Does it mean that you see power for 3 days continuous, or if
No.
there's shorter times? Can you explain?
When I say improvement, you can't. Why should you? It's strange when you have like 3 days. If you have like 3 days at a stretch, something is wrong. You yourself will be like, "What's happening?"
Right,
So when I talk improvement, maybe you could have light for like 16 to 20 hours a day.
right.
You understand? Yeah, that's improvement I'm talking about. That you have light all through a day, 2 days. You yourself, you ask, I hope I'm in Nigeria. I hope I'm all right.
Like what?
Because you hardly have light. Power, it's a challenge. And those people that make generator, they are making money. In short, I believe Nigeria will be one of the highest places they sell generator in the world. I'm very sure. Everybody has a generator. And when you talk about generator, you talk of the carbon. For me, I have a generator, but it's at the bus stop of my area. I don't use it. The
Okay.
noise, and it can pack up anytime. You can use it today, you go out, before you come back. So I gave it to a friend that has a business. He sells CDs, and he uses it to power the speakers and attract the customer. So I just left it.
There was a time where there was a shortage of gas, fuel,
Yeah.
petrol.
Yes.
And obviously some of these generators use petrol. So
Yes.
how difficult was life and business at that time? Because I know it must have been a week where people had a situation like that.
In January,
Right.
there was we call it the Occupy Nigeria protest. I was there all through for the
Right.
Monday to Saturday before the labor and government had their consultation and decide, the reason why people decide to protest was when you increase the price of fuel in Nigeria, everything has gone up, because you talk of transport, the driver will tell you the price of fuel has gone up. You talk
Right.
of bread, the bread will tell you, because after then the price of water went up. There's this water we call pure water, sachet water. So after that January protest, the price went up. It like doubled, the price.
So there was a ripple effect to
Yes,
that.
when there's an increase in the price of fuel, everybody added it to the cost of everything they do. So people protested then, and it was reduced slightly, because it was at first it was increased to 140, that is about $1. Then it was increased a little to now not up to 100 naira, but there've been this artificial scarcity. Before, even for months, it has been dragging on. There's been artificial scarcity of fuel. So fuel is something, because we are an oil producing nation. We are oil producing. So the only thing we benefit is oil. So
Right.
what else should we benefit?
Yeah, I guess we're going to move on to the next topic. David will lead us to.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to switch gears a little bit and talk about Boko Haram and the issues there, and issues with terrorism in general in Nigeria. So, I mean, just like today in Nigeria, there was a bombing of the offices of Airtel by Boko Haram, as well as some
MTN.
towers of MTN. And obviously, this is not the first time they've attacked MTN, and they've attacked radio towers and other cell towers in the past. And I mean, throughout the year, there's been numerous Boko Haram attacks. There was this day in May. There was a Kano bombing. 180 people in January. Obviously, we're coming up.
A journalist was killed there too.
Yeah, obviously we're coming up on the year of the Christmas Day bombing last year, and in the north, in Maiduguri, has been a hotbed with various attacks in towns and on buildings, businesses, churches, mosques. So, and equally, we've spoken to numerous people in the north and the south, and otherwise on different ideas that ways to deal with Boko Haram, or the ways that the government haven't been dealing correctly. So earlier this year, we spoke to Sheikh Husani and others who talked about the possibility, at least, of dialogue between the government and Boko Haram, and we didn't really see anything come out of that, whether the government actually had an engaged dialogue or whether Boko Haram would not come to the table. It was very unclear and nothing really came. There was no, or there is no ongoing dialogue, it appears, as these attacks continue. We've also spoken to Lieutenant Colonel Musa Sagir, of the spokesperson for Maiduguri JTF, and talking about his campaign against Boko Haram and what the JTF has been trying to do. However, he's been faced with numerous problems, as the JTF has not always been the best for the people. We've seen JTF attacks on civilians and reprisal attacks. Has been reported by numerous human rights groups that the JTF and Boko Haram, they believe, are both one, or at least allegedly have committed crimes against humanity. So, now we're at the end of 2012. Where do we go from here? What do you hope to see the government address? Do something differently. Like, what can they do at this point? I mean, just today they bombed the Airtel offices. I mean, when is this bombing and attacking going to end, or what can be done to put a stop to it?
Boko Haram is a soul taste. Is something that when it started at first, we're like, are these people Nigerians? Who are all these people? Who are these suicide bombers? Because an average Nigerian cannot commit suicide. Because we have the slogan of "we go better, things will get better, for goodness sake." So strapping bombs and going to a place to blow up, it started like a joke, and before you know, it started increasing. It started in Maiduguri, Borno State, and just down there, it started spreading all across the northern state. The only place you can be sure a little bit is after Abuja. Anything after Abuja, down north, everybody said down north there is Boko. Anything can happen. Churches, people hardly go to church. Women can't take handbags to church. If you are going, you have the metal detector everywhere, and police security, armored carrier. I remember I was in Jos in May. I had to go and see my brother because he was there. And it was not funny, the kind of security you have to go through. You can't drive a bike to pass a checkpoint. You have to come down from the bike and trek, because you could be on the bike and the bomb will be there and they will blow off. And the Boko Haram affected the economy of the north. For example, Kano, in Nigeria, each state has a slogan for it. Like Lagos is the center of excellence. Kano is the center of commerce. When you talk of business, I lived in Kano in 2008 for 6 months. So I saw how business was. I saw how it was like the Onitsha of the East in Nigeria. But the activities of Boko Haram have paralyzed businesses there. You come out like 9 in the morning or 10, and by 4, 5, everybody's back in because you don't know what will happen. When Boko Haram started, we thought it was a joke, but it's no longer a joke. But more Nigerians believe it's political. It's not I don't believe it's a fight. It's not something I should be free to discuss, because normally we don't discuss. It's a topic people are scared of discussing. You don't know.
Right.
Yeah,
we've lost of our colleagues. We've lost journalists, writing about it. So people don't want to talk about it because, as the president once said, he even has Boko Haram in this. He makes some statement and people be asked, like, if you know them, why not do something about them?
Mm-hmm.
That you said, I know them, they're in my cabinet. You know them, you're in cabinet. Because the lives that have been lost through Boko Haram, I guess it's like as if we are having a civil war, like what we had back in the 60s.
Yeah.
In churches. The Catholic Church in the north have received enough of Boko Haram, enough of Boko Haram threats and disasters and deaths, Christmas. Catholic, there's a way the Catholic faith is when before you go for a second mass, the first people, the people, the people inside, before they finish, the next people are outside waiting. So it's like a crowd. So each time they take on it, they know how to come in. They know, okay, at this time they are waiting to go for the next, and they come and strike.
Yeah.
And we don't want to believe it's not religion. Forget that thing. If it's religion, why would they go and blow this day? And okay, they said religion, they said education, no to education. That's what they say. But the day they were to blow up this day, they had a video of it. They were able to, so they are educated.
Yeah.
Right. Now, when we're talking that, I think we're now talking violence, and we've seen that, these university students that were killed for
Yes,
stealing a cell phone. Now, if you look at it from the international point of view, people would think, is Nigeria really a lawless country? Because if 4 young men can be murdered in the
yeah,
streets in
yeah,
broad daylight, and nobody is there to stop this, because they actually were stripped, paraded on the street,
yeah.
burnt alive until they died. Where was the police? What's the general feeling towards this kind of inhuman treatment? And if you watch the videos, it's the community that's there participating in these brutal crimes. So what is the general feeling? What do people really think about that?
The Alu case is one of the baddest, if we say Nollywood video that have come out of Nigeria. It's
Right.
the worst video anybody has. When it was on a Friday, I guess. And on Friday I was on Twitter in the evening. I was back from office and I was just like looking at my Twitter page. And I first saw the picture of Ugonna. Ugonna is quite handsome. And they put the picture like, yes, there's always this thing when you are rich, you are doing Yahoo, Yahoo, you are MAGA, you look at a handsome young guy and like, Yahoo, Yahoo. And they put a picture like, fine boy, not patient, he has gone to steal. See how he ended. I didn't get the picture, but I kept seeing, and I had to look at the hashtag and I searched the hashtag and I went down the thread and saw something is going on somewhere. And I left my phone and opened my laptop and I started saying, and I know something is going on. I called my friends in Port Harcourt. They were in the town. Uniport is like Choba. You're going outside Port Harcourt towards
Right.
by yourself. So they said, nothing. We don't know of anything. But with time, we found out that 4 young boys were killed on Friday morning. And the people had the guts, this phone, this BlackBerry, this phone, we think, the good of the internet and the bad of it. They had the guts to video everything and share. They were sharing it. And you were saying these boys are criminals, but most of us, I schooled in the East.
Right.
Yeah, I schooled in the East, so I know when I'm in a campus, I can dictate when some violence are related to more than normal. The first thing I looked when I started going through it, I was like, no, this could be cult related. It could
Right.
be that some factions, some factions are against each other, and now this is the time to take on some people because these boys don't look like criminal. And when the story started coming out, it was like, no, they were owing, and somebody in the community borrowed money from one of them, and they went to get the money, and they shouted and said they were criminals. And before you know it, they carried the boys. Even though the community said they've been experiencing robbery and all the rest. So the boys were like a scapegoat. But behind the story, it was more than that. It was not, those boys were not criminals. Those boys were not criminals. They were just victims of, they were at the wrong place.
Yeah.
They were just at the wrong place then. But
Yeah.
one thing that surprised me was where were Uniport students? Because that community is close to Uniport and they will have students there. Where were they? If the community decided to take, where were the students? Didn't somebody run? Can you give me a minute? I have to pause for a while. I'm coming.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's obviously Tina Armstrong Ogbonna. She's actually in the States right now, somewhere in Boston, and she's talking to us via Skype. Like we said, today we are actually just going through, like reviewing some of the interviews that we did on some important and major topics that we covered. So far, we've obviously talked about the Boko Haram story, we've talked about the power and the resignation of the minister. She gave us a brief rundown of the conference on climatic change in Doha that happened sometime this year. Anything else, David, that you might share?
Well, we also had some acts here, entertainment acts, and I think Fungai had the opportunity to interview some of them. I mean, I know now we had the South African musician Lyra, who has just said recently, or it's been released recently, that she's going to be performing at the inauguration here in the U.S. of President Barack Obama. She came to our studio during 2012 and spoke with us about her music and what it was like growing up in South Africa. Right.
So we're just going to find out if we have a clip of that interview just to show Lyra. We also had the opportunity of speaking to Ndaba Mandela, who's the grandson of obviously Nelson Mandela, and he was actually in the United States launching an organization called Africa Rising. And Africa Rising was is an organization that targets the youth, and in fact in the areas of arts, talking about filmmaking, we're talking about music, and basically he talked about how us as Africans are always the negative energy towards ourselves. So through the youth, they were trying to redirect their energies to bring out a light that's balanced, you know, within the international world that Africa stands for and Africa shows. So we obviously, once our clip for Lyra is ready, we're going to show you. But we also had a chance to talk to Kalusha Walia, who is the team captain, in fact, of the former Zambian team that perished some years ago in Gabon. And as you all know, that Zambia was the victors of the African Cup of Nations, and Kalusha Walia is actually now the president of the Football Association in Zambia. So we had a very detailed and heart-to-heart talk with him via Skype, of course, because he couldn't. So I think we're going to go into Kalusha Walia's video and just see part of that interview he did with Shore Omoyele. And this interview was actually via Skype. So once that interview clip is ready for you, we're going to show it to you and just take it from there. All right,
We promised last week we're going to continue doing what we love to do, which is bringing Africa to your doorstep, Africa. And then suddenly there was a major tragedy in the Zambia football in which almost all of your team was wiped out years ago. And the question that people have been asking is, how did you escape that tragedy yourself?
No, I think that's when I used to play with the team in national team, I went to Europe in 1985. At the end of 85, to pursue a professional career in football with Seco Bruges, and so in 1986. So I was in Europe. I was in Seco Bruges for 3.5 years. Then in 1989, joined the PSV Eindhoven. And so when I used to play for the national team, I would go directly from my base, whether in Belgium or in Holland, in that time in Holland, down into Zambia, not into Zambia, but in the place where we were going to play. So if we played in Morocco, then I would go directly to Morocco. If we played in Egypt, I'll go to Egypt. If we played in, for example, in Nigeria, then I'll go straight to Nigeria. So this is the kind of traveling arrangement that we always had. So I was not on that fateful day off the coast of Gabon in that flight, because I was scheduled to arrive and meet the team on Thursday. My flight was Amsterdam, Paris, and Paris-Dakar.
Wow. So yes, and that team went down, and everybody was just very sad about it. And it turned out that you help set up a team. There are times that you will be a coach, and when the team is not doing well, you jump into onto the field and start playing. How did that feel as a coach player?
No, that was not the intention, but when we started the World Cup qualifiers before the 2006, we had, the bulk of the boys that I've just won, the Christopher Katongos, Isaac, and Collins and Besuma, Renford was there, and Kennedy Mwene was there, and so before in 2004, 2005 we struggled, especially scoring goals. And I know, and my assistant coach, Ben Bamfuchile, may so rest in peace. He used to tell me all the time that, no, I think we should name you should name myself as a substitute, because if we have any problem, you can be able to go on the field and delegate the things to the players, because I used to train all the time with the boys, and if there was one man short, I would play that role, So it so happened that in one or two occasions I was able to come off from the bench and play, and the most famous being the game against Liberia when I was on the bench. But it was not the intention. The intention was that the boys, they carry on, and I just meant to coach.
Let me ask, were you tempted during this particular match to just take off your suit as the president of the federation to play during the match some of the matches in Libreville? Was there a time you were tempted to be a coach player during this last competition?
No. That was in 2004, 2005, yeah, before the 2006 World Cup, yeah.
All right. I mean, let's talk about how this team came about, because there's been a lot of information and controversy about, was it a homegrown team that defeated the rest of Africa?
So that was a video clip, an exclusive interview between Omoyele Shore of SaharaTV and obviously Kalusha Wali of Zambia, who's the Zambia's Football Federation president. He was obviously giving us a breakdown and update of how the team succeeded. And if you look at the historic success of this team, this is a nation that lost all of its players in a plane crash. Apparently, fortunately, actually, Kalusha was the team captain of that team that perished on the shores of Gabon some years ago. And it was a national disaster and quite a moment where historically things just fell apart, and that section of the region needed this moment of healing. And as you watch the game, you would see that this was obviously a decision that was made in the kickoffs to make Zambia the victor of this trophy. So right now we're going to move over and just show you a clip. This is of obviously Ndaba Mandela as he was speaking to Sahara reporters, giving us an update of Africa Rising, an organization that he created to help promote the youth and bring consciousness of their efforts and their participation in improving the image of Africa through the arts. So we're going to watch that clip and talk about it.
I think it was definitely worth it, and we've come a long way in these short 18 years of independence. If you look at the amount of people that now have houses, that have jobs, that are able to actually be involved in the education system, the economic system, it's still a small percentage, but it's growing every year. So there's still a lot of work to do as far as our economy is concerned, and getting the majority of our people involved and becoming active in the economic development. But I think the 18 years so far, what we have achieved has been quite monumental. Well, Africa is a large continent, made up of 53 countries. So I can definitely say that about South Africa. I can say that about places like Ghana and a few other places. I cannot say that about the entire continent because, it's a very diverse continent, and each country has its different levels of development and the stage that they've reached currently. So yes, in some countries it's worse than others. And that said, I don't think one should necessarily be paying too much attention to the negative aspects, because where there are problems, there are solutions. So, you know, we must not look at negativity purely in its isolated form, but in a way that will actually enable us to create, you know, real solutions using innovation and entrepreneurs. You know, these are the people that are really important for our economic development. So as far as entrepreneurs is concerned, there's really a large gap for them to be able to do their business, work their ideas, and really get really good returns, obviously keeping in mind the dynamics at play, the risk, the political situation, etc. So I think if you have somebody on the ground who will be able to assist you and get you to move around, things will be much easier for you.
So we're right back. That was a
have
video of
engaged with
Ndaba
our
Mandela
own
in our studios, and obviously talking about the launch of his NGO. And after the launch, he's made numerous trips around the world, mobilizing the youth and getting them involved to participate in projects that are related in bringing the image of Africa in a balanced society in the world. So we're going to hand over to David now. So
yeah, we're coming to the end of this particular segment on our some of our biggest interviews of 2012, and so we are going to pass it on to another segment soon. But just before we go, I think I'd like to mention that these were just a few clips of the many interviews that we did in 2012. And you can watch those on our YouTube channel at SaharaTV, including the full interviews for the clips we showed you, as well as other interviews in the past. So, for example, earlier in the year, we had talked to Muhammad Buhari, we had talked to Reuben Abati. We also recently talked to Tundu Bakari and Bishop Kuka about the issues with, well, Tundu Bakari's call for general overseers to be fired. We asked him about those questions and comments, as well as priests and pastors weighed in on the state of the Nigerian church and the issue of jets being bought by churches and by pastors and what they thought that was. So viewers, thank you very much for being with us on this segment. And coming up next, we're going to be talking about big transitions, elections, and political changes that occurred in parts of Africa in 2012, as well as an interview with a cancer specialist, Dr. Imo Okon, coming up at 12:15. Stay tuned, and again, thank you so much for being with us today.
thank you very much.
President of the Republic of Ghana is dead, according to reliable information reaching African Spotlight. The president died on Tuesday afternoon after suffering from a long battle with cancer.